When you think about Donald Trump's foreign policy, what comes to mind? Chaotic, unpredictable, maybe even impulsive, right? But what if it's not? That's what we're digging into today. We're unpacking a pretty controversial but surprisingly coherent argument that says these moves, they aren't random at all. Nope, they're actually calculated steps in a master plan to completely reshape the world. I mean, you've heard this a million times, right? There's no plan for Iran. It's a constant criticism you hear from commentators, from experts, that the administration's foreign policy, especially when it comes to Iran, just doesn't have a coherent strategy. It's a familiar line, for sure. But what if all that criticism is missing the point entirely? The argument we're exploring today suggests that behind what a lot of people see as just chaos, there's actually a deliberate and, frankly, an incredibly bold strategy playing out. A strategy that, according to this view, is coming together right in front of our eyes. All right, so to really get our heads around this theory, we've got to follow the argument step by step. First, we'll look at its core thesis, which is pretty contrarian. Then we'll explore this big idea of a greater North America. After that, we'll see how controlling the world's oil could be the ultimate trump card against China. And finally, we'll ask what this all leads to, a potential new world order? Let's dive in. Okay, first up, a contrarian thesis. And the big idea here is that, a lot of us are getting distracted by what the source material calls political theater. We're watching the show and we're missing the real strategic goals happening behind the curtain. And here it is, the central claim. What's been happening in Iran isn't some isolated event, not at all. In this view, it's a critical, absolutely essential piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. A puzzle designed to fundamentally hit the reset button on the global balance of power. So where does a plan this big even begin? Well, that brings us to part 2, the Greater North America Plan. According to this theory, this is the blueprint for building what's basically a nationalist fortress. So what in the world is Greater North America? Well, according to the source material we're looking at, this is a new global strategic plan. It claims it was announced by Donald Trump and a figure it calls the Secretary of State for War, Pete Hegseth. And the vision? It's for a massive, self-reliant powerhouse, absolutely packed with resources, stretching all the way from Venezuela in the south up through Canada and even grabbing Greenland up in the Arctic. Okay, but how on earth would you even start to build a fortress like that? Well, according to this argument, the very first, most critical step is to get control over the world's most essential resource, oil. This is where the argument starts connecting the dots between several key events. It kicks off in January with the move against Maduro in Venezuela, a country, by the way, with some of the biggest oil reserves on the planet and whose #1 customer is China. Then later, you have the conflict in Iran, which creates major disruptions to the flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. And the result of all this? Donald Trump announces that hundreds of oil tankers are now rerouting from the Middle East to the United States for their supply. See the pattern emerging? Now this is where it gets really interesting, because it breaks the logic down into 4 clear steps. Step 1, secure access to all that Venezuelan oil. Step 2, disrupt the supply coming out of the Middle East. Step 3, redirect the world's tankers to your own ports. And the final move? Will you position the United States as the world's new, undisputed, dominant supplier of oil? And this just brilliantly illustrates what the plan's next phase is supposed to be. This newfound energy dominance isn't just for power, it's a tool. The source argues it will spark an energy crisis over in Europe, forcing nations there to come, quote, cap in hand to the US for oil. And the price for that desperately needed oil? The strategically vital territory of Greenland. This brings us to the 4th piece of the puzzle, the China trump card. Because in this view, controlling the world's oil isn't just about resources. It's about gaining the ultimate leverage over America's biggest economic rival, China. And here's the key vulnerability. The source we're digging into claims that a whopping 45% of China's oil supply has to travel through the Strait of Hormuz. So by creating instability in that region, the U.S. effectively gets its hands on a powerful lever over the entire Chinese economy. And this all builds up to what the source calls the ultimate trump card. It argues that a state visit to China was timed perfectly, happening right as this new energy dominance was being flexed, giving the administration what it saw as an unbeatable hand in those long, drawn-out trade negotiations. But is it actually working? Well, the source points to this data as proof. It claims that ever since the conflict in Iran kicked off, China's export growth has just been crippled, falling all the way down to just 2.5%. And this is presented as direct evidence that the plan is hitting its target. So let's pull all these different threads together for our final section, a new world order. We're going to look at what this argument says is the ultimate goal of this entire massive geopolitical strategy. This slide really lays out the two competing worldviews side by side. Over on the left, you've got the globalist order, interconnected economies, international agreements, all that. And on the right, the nationalist order this plan supposedly wants to build. And that's all about national self-reliance, Fortress America, one-on-one bilateral deals, and of course, centralized American power. So to wrap it all up, the end goal, according to this argument, is four things. 1, reset the entire global system. 2, create a massive, self-sufficient Fortress America that's rich in resources. 3, cement its role as the undisputed military superpower of the Northern Hemisphere. And 4, win the long-term economic tariff game. And that leaves us with the big, central question this entire argument puts on the table. Are we actually witnessing a real, unfolding grand strategic vision that most of us have just completely missed? Or is this just an exercise in connecting unrelated dots after the fact, creating a neat story that just happens to fit a certain worldview? That's really the core question at the heart of what we've unpacked today.